in the country. But at the same time, uh, we'll try and emphasize on the wobblers which are more familiar or which are actually which winter or which are found in and around Mumbai as well as rest of the country. And also, I'll talk about some of the vagrants and possible birds which are there in the country as well. So let's come to what exactly are the lake wobblers. So there are like, uh, as soon as you look at the screen, you may see two different sets of wobblers here. The top row is all dull brown, uh, non-distinct kind of wobblers. Bottom four are very colorful, bright-looking birds. So all eight species are wobblers, but the top four are the Phylloscopus warbler, or also called as leaf wobblers. So these leaf wobblers, what are they? They are old world wobblers because they have evolved much earlier, or maybe I would say in the Eurasia or Europe or Asian region, other than the New World wobbler, which is the bottom row. The bottom row are the birds which are there from neotropics or America or South America and so on and so forth. So now you can actually see the difference between the old world and new world wobblers. Then, as we go further, if you look at this map, this is like more or less entire of Asia and Southeast Asia put together. But if you follow the cursor, this is where the main leaf wobbler distribution is, especially during breeding season. If you go all the way from Himalayas, all the way to Northeast India, South Assam Hills, Southeast Asia, all the way down to the smallest possible islands of West Papua, to multiple areas in China, especially southern side of Tibetan Plateau, and that's where the majority of the leaf wobblers breed. So that's what the distribution. So most of the distribution is there in and around Asia and Himalayas. Basically Himalaya and some parts of Southeast Asia and China. Within India, there are about 34, 35 species of leaf wobblers, out of which I would say around 23, 24 species breed in Himalayas and other areas. The rest of the wobblers are winter migrant. So when we look at the winter migrant of these, as well as the breeding wobblers, they show a couple of very distinct things. So they show a long distance migration. Some of them will travel all the way from northern Eurasia all the way to southernmost tip of India. Or even there are some certain wobblers which just breed in Himalayas and come down. And then there are certain species of wobblers which just show elevational migration. In the sense, what they do is they just move up and down in the mountain, especially in the Himalayas, but they just climb the elevation during summer months. And once they finish breeding, they just come down in elevation and winter in foothills or even mid elevations of these mountains. So usually we get to see leaf wobblers in singly or in pairs because they are highly territorial. But there are certain species of leaf wobblers which form colonies. They are very skulky that way, not as skulky as some of the Microcephalus wobblers as well. But at the same time, they are not very distinct. And one of the main identification character, let's before we could get that, what exactly happened in wobbler discoveries. So if you look at it, if you look at this graph, this is in 1932. So taxonomist has by then recognized about 29 species of wobblers, and till the time till mid 1990s, the number of wobbler species has just moved from 29 to 32. So there is not a big leap in terms of, or not many species of wobblers were described to science. But what happened after that, like especially in mid 1990s, is taxonomists not only started to look at the morphology of birds, but also the DNA structure of the birds. And once that happened, it started the entire ball game of leaf wobbler change. So the species which were thought to be 32 in number by mid 1990s shot up to 88, literally threefold the number as we speak in 2020. So this is what has changed the game completely when it comes to leaf wobblers. And one of the main reasons why uh, they were thought to be like they were just considered same species still for over a period of 70 odd years, because or 60 odd years is mainly because the plumages were so similar to each other. And I would say one of the main credits which of these splits should go to Paul Alstom and Martin and other guys who did a lot of this wobbler work in late 1990s, and then these numbers have caught up. So, what happens in leaf wobblers? Why they are so difficult to identify? So, main first thing is they do undergo go lot of mold. So, what happens? There are two distinct kinds of mold in wobblers. One is a fresh mold and one is a worn mold. And what happens in these two molds is, before we could get into that, we should think about the sizes of these wobblers. So all these leaf wobblers are very tiny. They are about 4 point, like lemon ram wobbler, if I remember correctly, was just 4.5 grams. And as we go to larger size leaf wobblers, they might be just like what, 8 or 9 or 10, maybe 8, 9 grams max. That's also, I'm overestimating the numbers. So the smaller the bird is very difficult for them to mold in terms of putting energy. So when they grow feathers, so let's say a bird loses a drop of blood and it replaces that blood, takes lesser amount of energy to replace that one drop of blood rather than to grow an entire feather. So growing a feather is a lot of investment for birds. So what wobblers do, and some of these wobblers, as I told you earlier, they migrate long distances as well. So a greenish wobbler, which is breeding at 4,000 plus meters in Himalayas, it can winter all the way in Mumbai or in peninsular India and heads back to its breeding ground. So as soon as they reach breeding ground, what they need to do is they have to breed. So when they breed, they have option to mold as soon as they reach the breeding ground. But if you think about the energy which is involved while mold during breeding season, is it can take a toll on a wobbler, especially small size birds. So what they do, they finish breeding, and once they finish breeding, they mold because food availability is still there, because they have because the breeding season there's a lot of insects available. That's when the birds breed, and so what they do is they mold afterwards. So most of the time when we see a fresh plumage or when we get to see the birds when they come down in winter, they will see them in fresh plumage, and when they go back before they head back to the breeding ground, you see them in worn plumage, and that's what the difference which happens between the wobblers. And when this fresh and worn plumage changes from each other, it happens because of the wear effect. So what wear effect happens? The wing bars which are very distinct may not be very distinct. The colors which are very distinct may not be very dull. Maybe they'll be just dull. Or that is also has played a big role in making leaf wobbler identification more difficult for bird watchers. And also, one of the main ID feature for this leaf wobblers has remained by the call or song. You can hear them well, you can identify almost each and every leaf wobbler. So that it can be that easy sometimes. But when it comes to looking at them to different distinct species and subspecies, it can be still tricky. So let's go to the next kind of problem where why it has still become still difficult for leaf wobblers identification is most of the bird identification, especially in leaf wobbler, happens because of sixth primary detail, which is impossible to see in the field. But at the same time, most of the field guides also say supercilium of a moderate length. If you look at all leaf wobblers, all of them will have supercilium. So that can be sometimes misleading. Or sometimes, let's say the underparts are brown without olive. It's not a very intuitive identification feature. Or flanks creamy versus flank pulvous. And all these things can be a problem when it comes to leaf wobble identification in the field. So before we get into identification, I want to talk about few feeding styles of birds, especially leaf wobblers, which may help you in identification of leaf wobblers in the field. So one of the main feature is of all leaf wobblers, they are all insectivores, and as they're insectivores, they feed on small insects, and they feed by gleaning the insects most of the time. So what do I mean by gleaning? Is taking something from the branch or leaf. So there can be two kinds of gleaning. So in this particular case, it's called a stand picking, where this Blythe's leaf wobbler is standing on a branch and trying to pick out insect from the flower here. or the fresh leaves. So what it does, it's actually standing in one place, stretching itself out and picking out insect. And this happens because this particular warbler, as it's large in size, so large size leaf warblers usually try and stand pick insects, other than small size leaf warblers like this. This is a lemon rump warbler, which try and take insects from leaves, but by hovering or sometimes even fly catching. And then there is a third kind of behavior, which I'll come to it when we talk about that particular species. But it's called as bark leering or even picking out insects from the stones or walls or something like that. So when we think about warbler taxonomy and we always see this particular bird topography in every possible bird book. But when it comes to leaf warbler, I would say there could be a multiple identification feature, like the median crown stripe, lateral crown stripe, to all the way to secondaries, beta coverts, median coverts, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to leaf wobblers, I would advise you guys to look at only 4 or 5 features and nothing beyond that. The more you see, more you may get confused, especially for this particular group. So what I would suggest, always look. So all of them will have supercilium. That is given. But if you see a leaf wobbler, look out for if this is one of the important feature called as wing bar. Second is the crown stripe. Third is the tertial edges. Fourth is the rump and the outer tail feathers. So if you look at these characteristics, the leaf wobbler identification can somewhat be little easier. So these are the 4 or 5 main identification feature which I've mentioned earlier. And out of these features as well, what I usually do is look at wing bars, look at sizes, look at drum patch and crown stripe, and then the lateral tail margin. I usually try and don't look at dorsal edges because that can be little trickier to find in the field. But it can. So every birder has a different way of identification. And I would say you should try and see how you get comfortable with certain identification features. So for me, tertial edges most of the time doesn't work unless and until I get a photograph of the bird. But if you want to see the bird and learn more about the wobblers, best is to see them through binoculars as much time as possible and see the behavior of these birds. So let's start those 5 steps which I said, or I would say 4 steps. So in this particular group, if you see all these 8 species, you will see the wing bars are completely absent. So if you see a leaf wobbler and if you don't see a wing bar, then out of those 34, 35 species of birds which are leaf wobblers which are found in India, you can eliminate everything else other than these 8 or 9 species of wobblers. So that makes our life little easier. And then if you don't see a leaf, if you don't see a wing bar in a leaf wobbler, then you should try and see what it could be among these 8 birds, 8 species or 9 species, other than anything else. So let's start with one of our commonest uh, leaf wobbler, chiffchaff. It usually found across India when it winters, especially dry habitats. Uh, it's usually solitary because when it winters and very restless, always flicks its tail, flicks its wing. But one of the main ID feature of this bird is very small bill, very small tail as well. So if you look at the overall body structure, the tail to body proportion is very small. And I'll come to that a little later when we talk about different or mountain chiffchaff or Kashmiri chiffchaff. But also note the supercilium is kind of faint in front of the eye, and there is a distinct olive in the wing panel especially. So if you see a leaf wobbler which is small in size, smallish tail, and after that if you see the supercilium, which is more distinct behind the eye, it's likely to be a chiffchaff. And if you listen to the call, it's very distinct single note kind of call. And what I said just now, because a lot of time people say that, oh, chiffchaff always has dark bill and that's how it's very easy to identify from mountain chiffchaff. I specifically use this particular photo, which shows a little bit of pale in our lower mandible, because some chiffchaff do have a pale coloration. So in the lower mandible. So what I'm trying to look to take your attention is the body shape of the bird, and that small tail I was insisting on is mainly, now look at the uh, next bird, and this is a mountain chiffchaff. And first thing you might notice is look at the tail, how big that tail is compared to the body when it comes to mountain chiffchaff against common chiffchaff. And also now you see the different identification feature. If the supercilium comes all the way to the bottom of the bill, there is no olive in the wing. Again, this bird is very restless. If you want to see this bird, the best place is Trans Himalayas, where it breeds in Ladakh and other areas during summer months, and it's extremely common bird. Like any small area with trees in Ladakh will have this particular species. It's that common. And when you listen to the song, it's a completely different song altogether when it comes to Chiff Call. It goes up and down, and it's much longer, much more plaintive, lot more nasal as well. But the main ID feature for this is the body shape itself. Very elongated bird compared to compact bird of Chiffchaff. And if I remember it correctly, and if you see the distribution of this bird in winter, this bird winters in the northern plains as well in certain areas. Like let's say if you are birding in Harike, but if you're birding in northwest of India, especially just foothills of Himalayas, this bird might be there along with chiffchaff, and that's the overlap zone. So when you look and identify leaf warblers, especially during winter months, try and see the distribution of birds other than the looking at the bird book and open the bird book and trying to identify them directly. So it's always important to see distribution along with the ID features of the bird. So if you are birding in South India, there's a very less chance that you might just see a mountain chiffchaff because it might be just a vagrant here. But if you are birding in northern plains, especially northwest, then you should be a little bit more careful. And again, the common chiffchaff might be present in more in numbers there than mountain chiffchaff, but I could be completely wrong in this particular case. So let's come to the next bird, which looks exactly like common chiffchaff, more or less the same thing, small tiny bill or a brown in color without wing bars again, but it also has no olive in the wing panel. But at the same time, it is also very restless. Like if you think a common chiffchaff is restless, the plain leaf warbler is even more restless. It will just move from one branch to other branch constantly. And if I remember it correctly, and if you want to see this particular behavior, then I think there's a video uploaded by Sachin Shrupli on YouTube. You should see that video, and you will immediately know the behavior of this particular bird and how distinct it is compared to all other leaf warblers of Indian subcontinent. So it can get confusing sometimes with common chiffchaff, but when you see the behavior, it's a piece of cake when it comes to this particular leaf warbler. Of course, images are always difficult, but when you look at the bird through with the help of behavior, birding can get a little easier. And it's one of those leaf warbler which does sing in winter. So it forms certain territories, and it defends its territory in winter months. I think I should have a song here. No, that's a call of a much more. It's repetitive compared to common chiffchaff. At the same time, when you listen to the song is lot more plaintive again. And now we go to a couple more leaf wobblers. Again, one of the commonest leaf wobblers when it comes to southern India in winter. It breeds high up in Himalayas, above 4,500 meters sometimes. In Ladakh and other areas, it's found quite easily. But it winters across India, especially in the forested landscape. So earlier warblers which we saw were more or less in the dry habitat, open area birds. But when it comes to typical leaf warbler, it's more or less in a bird which winters in the forested areas, forest areas. usually try and feed in on trees, but it does come down to bushes when it comes to higher elevation where the vegetation itself is very sparse. And now, if you look at the identification feature point of view, it's the underbelly is completely yellow, and it has a yellow color supercilium. But what you should concentrate when it comes to Pickle's leaf wobbler is look at the supercilium color if it's the same as its throat color. The supercilium color is similar or same in the tickle sleeve wobbler, other than the similar looking sulfur bellied wobbler. And when you listen to the song, it's lot more trill. And most of the time when we see them in winter in South India, they rarely sing. But when you listen to them in winter, they more sound like chip, 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 and usually very faint call compared to other leaf warblers, and they do form flocks in winter. So now we come to the another similar looking. So basically, first what we saw were the leaf warblers without wing bar, but brown in color in the dry habitat. Now we are looking at leaf warblers which are without wing bar but slightly yellowish in color. And the second bird over here is the sulfur bellied wobbler. And the reason why I chose this photo is sitting on a ground, and because this bird is easily identifiable when it comes to its behavior, because it feeds either on barks, on walls, on sandbars, on ground, dry streams. And the reason why they feed like this is they are the bark leaner which I told you about. This is the only bird which you will see which behaves like the only leaf wobbler, I would say, which behaves like this when it comes to its feeding style. And if you get to see the bird on, let's say, on a branch sitting quietly, which is a rare case, but let's say if you see it, then what I would say that you should look at the supercilium color, which is lot more brighter compared to throat color. So in Pickle's leaf wobbler, the throat color was same color as its supercilium, but in this particular case, especially in sulfur-bellied wobbler, the supercilium color uh, is brighter compared to throat. And now let's see if we can hear the calls here. You look at a call. Song is completely different compared to the song of Pickle's leaf wobbler. Much slower in pace compared to the song of Pickle's leaf. And when you listen to the call, it's again very chip chip. But what you have to look at is the behavior of this bird, and that most of the time will nail the identification in this particular case. Now let's come to the next set of leaf wobblers without wing bars. So again, I'm insisting on the I'll keep on doing that throughout the talk. That we are looking at the leaf wobblers right now without wing bars. First were the brown color leaf wobblers, but in a dry habitat. Or then we are looking at without wing bar leaf wobblers, but in the forest habitats and yellowish in color. And now we are looking at leaf wobblers which are brown in color, but more or less next to the water. So this is a picture of a smoky wobbler, and you'll always see smoky wobblers in a habitat where there's a lot of water hyacinth. There is a lot of driftwood. So there is it's and very skulky compared to other leaf wobblers. And one of the main ID feature which I always look, because they may look similar to dusky wobbler, but what you should do is to look at the leg color of this bird. So invariably in dusky wobbler, the leg color is almost always pale, but when it comes to smoky wobbler, the leg color is always dark. And look, let's see if you can hear the recording. And this they give this particular call when they're moving to the dense vegetation, and usually very difficult bird to see otherwise. But if you look at the bird, especially during the because of the habitat, it can get little easier to identify. Now let's come to a similar looking wobbler, which is again without wing bar, very close to the water, in a dense undergrowth, but often flicks its wings and tail. But if you look at the leg color, you see the pale legs compared to the earlier picture, and that's one of the main reasons why one of the main identification feature between dusky and smoky warbler. So dusky warblers usually show these pale legs along with its distinct call, which is like this, very very sharp and very high pitched compared to smoky warblers. So once you start dividing warblers into uh, wing or without wing bar present or with a wing bar absent, and then you try and divide them further into small categories, then the identification can get much easier with the help of habitat, behavior, and everything. So let's come to the next wobbler, which is a Tytler's leaf wobbler. One of the very important bird when it comes to identification in terms of distribution and the range. This one has a very tiny range when it comes to breeding. So it breeds only in the western Himalayas and winters in western Ghats. We do get them sometimes on passage. Again, one of the only leaf wobblers without wing bars and which is more or less greenish in color. But when it comes to Tatler's leaf wobbler, what one should look at is, of course, the wing bar is absent. But usually after that, look at the bill. The bill is like a very sharp chisel shape, which is unlike of all other leaf wobblers found in the region. So when it looks as when you look at this bird, especially in Western Ghats also, it flies and winters is slightly higher up in elevation than lower down. Like in Mumbai, if you want to, in and around Maharashtra, if you want to see it, then Mahabaleshwar is one of the places to see this bird. So is Panala Fort. And that way, you go all the way to the South India and higher up in the mountains. Nandi Hills in Bangalore, Western Ghats, Ooty, Munnar, in all these, the bird is present. But uh, in that particular place, you have to be a little careful when you look when you scan a lot of greenish wobblers, because greenish wobblers may not show the wing bar, but at the same time, if you look at the bill, it gets much easier. And we tend to hear calls in winter rather than song. But if you want to listen to the call, it's a very sweet kind of call, which is unlikely of any other leaf wobblers. So now we looked at all these wobblers, leaf wobblers without wing bar. But what happens when there are wing bars with bird leaf wobblers with wing bars? So before we get to wing bars are present or absent, what we should do is to judge the size of these wobblers. So once we eliminate all the, so if you see a leaf wobbler with wing bar, so first you are eliminating all the 8 species of or 8 or 9 species of leaf wobblers without wing bars. But then look at the size of the bird. So if you see a size in terms of leaf wobblers, greenish large-bill leaf wobbler or bright green or green wobbler are larger in size. So when you look at these leaf wobblers, all three of them are large in size. They do show a wing bar, which is present here, in this case over here, in this case over here. And along with that, there is no median crown stripe. So now the identification feature which we are looking at is more or less for these three species of wobblers. So if you see a large size wobbler with wing bars without crown stripe, then you should look for, try and eliminate among these three wobblers what it could be or what could not be, and then you head out to individual species identification. So what I'm trying to say is, let's say if you see this bird, which is a large-billed leaf wobbler, so again the wing bar is present, the crown stripe is absent, a large bill, visibly large bill compared to other birds. But at the same time, it can get sometimes confusing with greenish wobbler. But what I usually do is large bill leaf wobblers are always elongated in shape. It's, and also if you look at the just below the eye and the ear coverts and just below the ear coverts, it always has this motley or mottled feathers where you can see tiny black dots, which is one of the main ID features. And when you listen to the song, it's one of the most distinct songs. Like if it, you yeah, is a song of a large bill leaf wobbler, is T T T T2. And when it comes to song, a call, it always a just two note, high pitch like a swing. Chee, chee. Now, one more thing which I would say is, especially during breeding season or breeding elevation, um, large bill leaf warbler, because it's larger in size, is uh, forms much larger territories, and it always in its territory there is some source of water body. It can be a small stream, small pond, and that can also be one of the ID features. So this is not like the ID feature which you should look out for. But if you are birding next to a stream and if you see a large size leaf wobbler, then you should consider large-billed leaf wobbler as well. That's what I'm trying to say here. And also, as it's larger in size, like if you look at all large size leaf wobblers, they're a lot more lethargic. Like compare this with greenish wobblers, compare this with the case of a large-billed leaf wobbler, or even the Arctic wobbler. All these birds are a lot more lethargic and moves very slowly on in the canopy. So that is one of the main thing which you should look out for when it comes to identification of these birds. And let's go to the next bird. So this is one of our very familiar bird along with bright green warbler. And if you ask me, greenish warbler might be one of those birds which are the numerous birds when it comes to wintering grounds, and they are all over India when they winter. Uh, and if you get chance, try and read a piece written by, I think it was Marushwar. I'll try and figure out who exactly wrote that article, but it was a very interesting article about how these wobblers play even bigger role than a tiger in a forest because they are so numerous in number in terms of ecosystem. But we'll come to that later. Let's see what you should look out for when it comes to identification of greenish wobblers. So uh, they form territories in winter, and all these territories are highly defended by these individuals. Uh, they do show wing bars, but at the same time, the entire underpart are more or less white. And I'm going to play a song because what they do, as soon as they winter in South India, they form territories. And as soon as they reach their wintering ground, they start singing. So they sing during winter in first few months or first few days, and then they do sing in winter sometimes only when the other individual enters the territory of the previous individual. So what I'm trying to say is, I chose this recording on purpose. Now listen to the song of this bird that two individuals are duetting with each other in this wintering ground because one bird has entered the other one's territory. This is one individual. The second individual started responding immediately. Again, the first one started singing back. And then again, the second individual is responding to the tape, to the song of the first bird. And now, when you listen to the second recording, it's actually a call which we get to hear a lot often, which is always two note call. Okay, it's always two note. And why I'm insisting on call in this particular species is mainly because when we talk about green wobbler, which is the next one, you will know the importance of the two note against three note call. Because green wobbler usually gives three note call. And again, just like greenish wobbler, because they are split from each other, it forms territories in winter. Again, they sing as soon as they reach their wintering grounds. But one thing which you should look out for is the yellowish tinge in the bird. So if you can see the small yellowish tinge on the belly, on the supercilium, overall it has greenish tinge. That greenish tinge is one of the main identification character for green warbler. And this is the song. But when it comes to the call, can you hear the three syllable call? Let's see for this recording, the next recording. I've chosen one recording on purpose here because how it can be get sometimes confusing. With the next step. Yeah. So in this particular case, the green warbler has started with two-note call, just like the greenish warbler. But if you wait long enough, this it will get into the three-note call. See, it started with two-note call, and then as the call progressed, it started giving three-note call. So it's always important to wait for a bit, not identify birds or leaf warblers immediately. If because it's very difficult sometimes to listen to the calls and see, uh, let's say, only the first 2 seconds of the call, even I would have said, oh, it sounds like a greenish warbler. But you all should always try and see if you can listen to the entire song or entire call for a longer duration and identify it as the next or immediate moment. Again, start giving switch from two note to three note, again two note, and in the end, again it ended with three note. So it can happen sometimes, but if you listen to the entire calls along with the ID features like this, that is ring bars without crown stripe, large in size, and yellowish tinge, then it's likely to be a green wobbler rather than greenish wobbler. So let's see if we go to the next one, what's happening. So now we come again to the another set of large size wobblers. So in this particular case, there could be one or two wing bars. But which case which wasn't there earlier, but it's present in this particular group, is the crown stripe. So if you see a crown stripe along with two wing bars, large in size, then in likelihood that there could be only two species of wobblers here. What I'm trying to get at, the first one what we saw were like leaf wobblers without wing bar. Then we looked at large size leaf wobbler with wing bars without crown stripe, and now we're looking at a large size leaf wobbler with wing bars but with crown stripe as well. So if you are done enough birding in Himalayas, then these two are one of the most familiar wobblers over there. Out of which the one on the right winters in South India. But let's go to Blythe's leaf wobbler first. It's distributed across Himalayas, all the way from Western Himalayas to Eastern Himalayas. And the first thing, if you notice in these two wobblers, they flip their wings alternatively during breeding season. And that's one of the main ID feature when it comes to narrow down on these wobblers compared to all other wobblers. If you see a leaf wobbler flicking its wings, which is large in size and with a crown stripe, then you are more or less you're looking only at two wobblers other than anything else. So what I'm trying to and now let's try and narrow it down among those two wobblers. So what we should look out over here is this is the light leaf wobbler. It's very compact bird. What do I mean by compact? I'll just switch to the next slide just for that particular reason. It's still song. Hold on. If you look at this bird, it has much more elongated structure compared to light sleeve, which is a very small or very compact in shape. Both of them can flick their wings. Almost always, light sleeve should show two wing bars, but if you listen to the song, it's more or less much easier. So it just goes up and down compared to Western ground, which may have slightly more much more nasal and much more high pitched song. but you should always try and see the shape of the bird in these two particular species. One more thing which you might notice in these two species is they will always have fleshy bill. So look at the bill over here. It's a lot more fleshy. It's like a almost pale. And when you see them in winter in South India, they are always in flocks. They participate in mixed hunting flocks, or they can be found in on their own as well. So I have seen as many as 80 individuals of Western ground leaf warbler in a single flock in South India. It can be that sometimes they can go to that group, but if you look at them and around Mumbai, the flocks are 4 or 5 individual up to 10 is not very uncommon. Like I would say Tansa, SGNP, but mainly the Tansa is another good place to go and see Western ground leaf warbler in wintering months. So now we come to a next group, which is small in size, again with wing bars, but almost faint or almost no crown stripe, and which one of and both these wobblers don't show any pale rump. Now we are taking getting things little bit more complicated in terms of what you should look out for leaf wobblers. So again, let's because I will try and revise as much as possible, step by step. So it's because once you start looking at these features in a particular manner, while eliminating other species, then the leaf wobbler identification can get a little easier. So first we looked at leaf wobbler without wing bar. Then we looked at leaf wobbler with wing bar, large in size, without crown stripe. Then we saw a large size leaf wobbler with wing bar, with crown stripe. And now we're looking at small size leaf wobbler with wing bars, slightly faint crown stripe, which may or may not be visible, along with no the wobbler without a rump patch. And then when you look at these characters together, there are only two options in India. One is the yellow broad wobbler, the second one is the Hume's wobbler or Hume's leaf wobbler. So what do I mean by that is when you look at these birds, uh, again, like there will be dorsal wedges present in both these birds, but that can be little difficult usually to see. Uh, so when it comes to Hume's leaf wobbler, a very tiny bill, very tiny legs. Just like if you look at it, it may remind you of something like chiff-chaff again when it comes to shape, but always found higher up in trees also, dry habitat, but on trees. Rarely comes down to ground like unlike chiff-chaff. And this has a greenish tinge, always present with this nice looking wing bars. At least the anterior wing bar is a lot more distinct compared to posterior. Like the anterior is always faint compared to posterior wing bar, and you should always try and see look at the call of this bird, which we hear quite often. This is one call type. They repeat the call a lot more often than other leaf warblers. Is sometimes the second wing, the second call time. So if you are birding and if you hear this kind of call, Hume's leaf warbler is one of those warblers which may give two distinct song types. I just need to charge my laptop as well. Here we go. So also note with all these characters, you can always see the supercilium, which is not very distinct here. It's slightly weaker supercilium compared to our next bird, which is yellow broad wobbler. So yellow broad wobbler has two wing bars. More or less, most of the time, the both wing bars are present. You can see again the tertial edges, which are very distinct. A very long supercilium, which reaches almost to its nape. But again, always found higher up in the canopy. And I would say look out for this bird. I'm sure this bird is highly overlooked compared to what its distribution says in the bird books. In last few years, we have been getting we are getting yellow-browed warbler all across South India, and that could be because of two reasons. Earlier, I'm not saying I think collected specimens were more or less from northeast and other areas because its main wintering ground is Southeast Asia. But in last few years, and it has been evident in Europe as well, that bird has been seen very regularly in Western Europe as well. Uh, it could be because of, we don't know, because of climate change or because of the breeding ranges of this bird is in Eurasia. So when the breeding ranges changes, the wintering range should change immediately because of that as well, because they're trying to come down uh, latitudinally down below. So when it comes to yellow-browed warbler, look out for this bird across South India as well nowadays. Also, a lot of these warblers, I would come to that in the end maybe, that they are showing different elevational ranges, different distribution ranges because of climate change, but or most likely because of climate change. But when you see a leaf warbler which is small in size with one or two distinct, most of the time two distinct wing bars, with almost no median crown stripe, without pale rump patch, and very long supercilium, likely to be yellow-browed warbler. And now listen to the call. It's lot more distinct single note and very distinct call. If you are birding in Northeast India, this is like a Greenwich warbler equivalent uh, of leaf warbler there when it comes to distribution. It's all over the place. One of the commonest calls you will hear any birding anywhere in Assam in winter months or uh, in entire northeast of India, I would say. Now, let's come to another little bit more complicated, lot more patterned leaf wobblers. Small in size, one or two wing bars, pale median crown stripe, and along with that, pale rump patch. So earlier, what we saw were all these both wobblers had these characteristics, but with a faint crown stripe and without a pale rump patch. Now we are looking at little bit more complex birds, and these are the two likely possibilities which are there in this particular group. Is one on the left is Brooks's leaf warbler, one on the right is a lemon rump warbler. Let's come to lemon rump warbler first. Usually found higher up in the canopy, and very rarely comes down to ground. But what I told you earlier is very important over here. Among all these wobblers, as soon as you come to smaller wobblers, these wobblers starts hovering or fly catching while catching insects. So especially this particular bird, lemon rump wobbler, it goes after insects on the wings and try and catch them. So when you look at lemon rump wobbler, you'll first notice a very small size, a very distinct wing bar. But along with that, at the wing bar and crown stripe, along with that, what you will notice is a hooked eye stripe, just like a question mark. It comes down, and that is if you see a leaf wobbler with a distinct eye stripe which comes down, it becomes much easier. There is no other leaf wobbler within Indian limits technically which looks like that. Um, well, Chinese leaf warbler is there in India, probably overlooked again, and which may look similar to this, but a crown stripe will be a lot more distinct behind the first part. It will be little faint. But anyway, we'll come to the call and songs of this bird. Very distinct call and very distinct song. Lot more trill. And why I'm pointing a trill after that this up and down note, because it may sound like a buff barred wobbler sometimes. But if you listen to the entire song, then it becomes much easier. Let's go back and listen to the entire song. Trill followed by variation in the song. And let's come to the call. Yeah. So it's always important to look at everything together, not just call, not just song, but all ID features along with the call and songs. And then the default identification can get little easier. So now we come to another leaf wobbler, which is Brooks's leaf wobbler. Another very important bird because winters in a very small areas, not a very large wintering distribution. If you're birding in northern India and especially near water bodies with trees, then you should look out for this particular bird. It always has this yellowish tinge on the body, uh, shows distinct ground stripe, and when it again hovers and feeds, it shows its pale rump, just like lemon rump gobbler. When they feed, they show this yellow rump again and again and again, and then that makes our identification a little easier. Also, this bird will always show this kind of pale bill at the lower mandible. So if you see a small leaf wabbler with wing bars, with crown stripe, with yellow rump, yellowish in tinge, and feeding by hovering in and around water bodies and on trees, then it's likely to be a leaf wobbler, especially if you are birding in the northern India. And this is how the call like. Sometimes they may sound similar to Hume's leaf wobbler, but you should also always look out for other morphological features along with these. Now we come to another set of leaf wobbler. What we saw earlier, like small in size, one or two wing bars, pale medium ground stripe, pale rump patch. But along with that, if you see a bird with a white outer tail feathers, there are only two options here. One of them is ashy throated wobbler. The second one is buff barred wobbler. So identification of these wobblers is always about combination of characters and eliminating other birds, other relief wobblers. So what I mean by these is like for let's say take example of buff barred wobbler. Uh, it will always show yellowish color wing bars. It will show a very tiny bill compared to the body. It will show white outer tail feathers, especially when they flick their tail or when they hover after insects again. Again, small size birds. So small size leaf wobblers will give you opportunity when they try and fly and catch insects. So we would try and see when they're feeding, the rump patch is present or not, or the white outer tail feathers are present or not. So I often say when while you're birding, and especially when you're looking at leaf wobblers, if I know if I'm birding well or not is when I try and see the leaf wobblers in flight and see if I can see white outer tail feathers and with a rump patch while birding. So once you start, so that time that depends on your good or bad birding form, I would say. But anyway, so always look out for white outer tail feathers along with one or two wing bars here, and then the identification will be very easy. And now we'll heard the lemon rump wobbler, which had that distinct trill, followed by that up and down song. And now listen to the song of a buff barred wobbler, all almost similar, but does not go up and down at the end of the song. So always wait for birds to complete their songs and call before calling their names out, because it can be sometimes little confusing. So it's always important to listen to the entire song. And let's see if you can listen to the call again. Yeah. This is the call, chip 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 chip, and this is a very familiar call for anyone who birds in Himalayas in winter, especially just like we get to hear greenish wobblers here in winter. People birds in Himalayas get to hear buff barred wobbler all the time. Now come to the next wobbler, which is ashy throated wobbler. Shows almost the same kind of thing: yellowish wing bars, white outer tail feathers, very distinct crown stripe. But when you look at the throat, it always white and ashy with a crown stripe also, which shows white in color. And the throat to body, the yellowish belly and the throat has always this contrast, and which makes the identification of asteroid wobbler much easier. The more pattern the leaf wobblers are, you will see this in next coming slides also. Much easier it gets to identify them. And when you listen to the song, two note, three note, sometimes, and it's very distinct song. See, three note. It started with two note, became three note, and let's see the call. Very faint, nondescript kind of call. Again, more you listen to the bird songs and bird calls, more you remember. It all about because of practice, and more you listen, wobblers may get easier when you bird more. Let's see. So now I want you guys to write on comments. Do you think both these birds are same or different species? You can comment on it on a chat, I guess. I don't know somewhere I can. Do I need to exit the mode and
Yes, they can comment on the chat. Yes, yes.
and you can just not just tell me if it's the same bird, if the same species or different species. You tell me why as well. Why do you think? Let me see if I can see the comment somewhere. I'm still on
You'll have to see the charts. Yeah, yeah.
mode. Hold on. Unable to.
On the top, maybe you should be able to see the charts.
Yeah, maybe. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Okay, yeah, now I can see
Read.
the chat. Big
Okay.
color, yes. Two different species. Okay. Take your time. You can, but you have to tell me why you think they're two distinct species or same one or the other. Peak color is one of the most commented feature. Anything else you can see? Anything else you can notice? Leg color
Somebody
is
is
also the
mentioning the
same.
leg color,
Yes.
tail color, leg colors.
Okay. Crown is different. Perch. Okay. Let's keep going for some more time. Shape of the eye ring. Okay, more or less. So among all the wing bar, okay, talons, okay, okay, cheek, yes. Finally, Adesh has commented something. What is it? Cheeks here. So now start looking at what Adesh has pointed out over here. I'll switch back to the presentation mode. Use the chat.
I
Okay.
think it's already into presentation mode.
Yeah, it's okay. Great. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now what Adesh has pointed out over here, when you're looking at these two wobblers, they are two different species, of course. But now what he said, look over here. Can you see the cheek pattern over here? This is a yellowish tinge which is going up. It will be more distinct in the next slide. Okay. So more or less, white spectacle wobbler and gray cheek wobbler look similar to each other. But when it comes to the head pattern and when you look at the cheeks, then you can see the difference here. There is a almost yellowish tinge to lores and a cheek, and that can give you first clue if it's a white spectacle wobbler or a gray cheeked wobbler. But more than that, what I usually do is where I get to see the bird. So let's say if I get to see a gray-headed wobbler with a yellowish body in a good forest and with some mixed bamboo, there's a good chance that it being a white spectacle wobbler or a gray-cheeked wobbler, which can be in a degraded habitat as well. So when it comes to these wobblers, which were earlier considered as a Cicercus wobbler, because now all your bird books may say there are two species of wobblers, Philoscopus wobbler and Cicercus wobbler. All of them are now grouped together under Philoscopus. So now listen to the song of these two, and then you will know why they are two different distinct sounding like wobblers. That's the classic song of a gray-cheeked wobbler compared to white spectacle wobbler. Sounds totally different compared to, and it makes you to give drill sometimes. Yeah. So that's how the song changes between, like it's different for both these species. If you listen to the song, because both of them will have this kind of broken eye ring in front of the eye, both of them will show wing bars, both of them will show similar looking, more or less similar looking bills, or even the crown stripe, which may or may not be very different depending on the light condition. But if you listen to the song, followed by the yellowish tinge to the lores and the cheeks, then it's always easy to identify between gray cheeked wobbler and white spectacle wobbler. So let's go to the next set. So this is what happened. This is when Cycircus wobbler were called as Philoscopus. Certain species of Philoscopus wobbler were called as Cycircus wobbler. So there was a time in 1990s where all these wobblers were called as golden spectacle wobblers. This used to like when I used to identify wobblers with uh, pictorial guide uh, or Book of Indian Birds and even handbook. All these wobblers were named under one species called as Cycircus burki. And then Paul Armstrong went and birded in mountain. And why songs, knowing songs plays an important role because he was birding in one mountain in China and he was birding in the lower elevation. The song was one kind. When he went to middle elevation and the song changed and it has a lot more trills. And again he went to high elevation and song changed back to the lower elevation kind of song. Then he realized there's something funny going on. Then he went back to museums. And this is before even he could do a DNA analysis, he figured out by looking at the morphology and the minor characteristics that what we thought as Cycircus monkey as a single species were actually a group of six different species. And this is what a good bird watching or investigative bird watching there in the field. So we don't have to worry about all six species because we do have only three species in India. There could be one possible wintering bird which has been reported in a couple of bird reports, but not yet added in the bird list. So first we come to the Whistler's wobbler. So in India we get Whistler's wobbler, we get Cycircus tephrocephalus, which is which is grey crown wobbler, and Cycircus burki, which is green crown wobbler. So we are looking only at three wobbler which are yellowish in color, very distinct black crown stripe, and first thing we should look out is the eye-ring. If the eye-ring is complete, is eye-ring is broken. If eye-ring is complete, then it's a Whistler's wobbler. Also, one thing you may notice is the crown stripe, lateral crown stripe, which comes down, is faint at the base of the bill. So right over here, the crown stripe is very faint, but the eye ring is complete. And if you listen to the call, then it's very distinct. Two note, repetitive song. And when we come to the next bird, which is a green crown wobbler, now look at the eye ring. Eye ring is broken behind the eye right over here. And when you see a eye ring which is broken behind the eye, next thing you should do is to check the crown. And in this, the crown comes all the way down to the base of the bill, which is unlikely in the case of a Whistler's wobbler, which also has a complete eye ring. The reason why I said look out for the crown stripe, because when it comes to tephrocephalus, the gray crown wobbler, you will know why broken eye ring and the crown stripe is important. But let's listen to the song. It will have some trills in the song. Starting call, which sounds like a Whistler's, but wait for some more time. This is where it changes. And also, when you look at green crown wobbler is slightly found in the degraded habitat as well. And when it comes to the next one, which is a grey crown wobbler, look at the eye ring which is broken behind the eye, but at the same time, look at the crown stripe. On either side of the crown stripe, there is a grey. And lateral crown stripe is black in color, comes all the way down to the base of the bill, but the crown is grey along with just below the lateral crown stripe, there is also a grey color. And almost invariably, if you see a grey crown wobbler, it will be in a degraded habitat, open degraded habitat, other than dense forest. So when you listen to the song, there are a lot more trills. Look at the number of trills which it will give in the song. So basically, when you start looking at these wobblers with the eye ring, broken eye ring or complete eye ring, and then you start breaking them down to different identification feature, then the birding can get little easier. Again, Whistler's warbler is found throughout Himalayas and South Assam hills. Uh, Green ground warbler is present throughout Himalayas, but more or less absent from South Assam hills. Grey ground warbler is present in South Assam hills and slightly in eastern Himalayas, where the Wolong and other areas are, but more or less absent from western Himalayas completely. So you should always try and see whenever you go out for bird watching. Bird watching is always about how well you do your homework. So if you do your homework properly about where the birds are distributed, what habitat they are found in, what elevation they are found in, then the birding becomes much easier. And that holds true for leaf warblers as well. So you try and see before you go out for birding, try and see the habitat, try and see the distribution of birds, and then you try and identify birds, then it gets much easier. Let's go to the next one. This is probably the easiest of the lot. Grey-hooded warbler, found across Himalayas, South Assam hills. There are some 4 or 5 distinct subspecies in this bird, uh, but all of them are very distinct looking. Uh, they are all invariably always found in secondary and open habitat. You don't have to worry about it. Don't like almost absent from the forested habitats. Songs are very distinct. Again, the reason why I kept this bird along with the bird next, because the song of this bird may sound similar to the next warbler, which is a mainly northeastern warbler, which is yellow-winded warbler. But now, but the overall structure, the yellow comes all the way to the throat. Body is yellow with a gray crown, with a gray head, with a grayish crown stripes, and which makes birding identifying this bird a little bit more easier. And let's come to the next one, which is another distinct looking warbler, yellowish in color. But look at the head pattern. There's no gray in it. But listen to the song of this bird. Very similar to gray-hooded warbler, but it usually found in a slightly forest habitat, forms flocks in winter. Uh, but look at this very distinct looking head. Lateral crown stripe, central crown stripe is present, fleshy yellow bill, can show wing bars in most of the plumages. And even though it's a yellow-winged warbler, the overall bird itself is yellow, and which makes the identification of this bird much, much, much easier. And then I think there's one more warbler which you should look out for. Another distinct looking warbler, or a chestnut crown warbler, found again in the Himalayas. A very distinct song. But look at the wings, the body, and crown. There's only leaf warbler, I would say, with a red in its head. It has a hint of crown stripe. The black lines comes, crown lateral crown stripe comes onto the red crown, but very distinct looking bird. And if you listen to the song, it's very thin, high, very distinct look sounding bird. Highly unlikely that one can misidentify this particular leaf warbler. Uh, so now we have gone through lots of these species. Let me see if I can open the comment section again. Hold on.
Is this the last slide?
The slow. No, that's not it. The
Okay.
hold on. Why can't I see the comments here? Let me just try to type a comment over here so I can actually see if I can
One minute.
comment coming in.
See if you got it.
Not yet. One sec. Yeah. No, can you please type it again? Just say hi one more time. Then I will. Perfect. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we are going to do, we have gone through so many leaf warblers and we try to see if we can try and see have different characters which you can put together. Now, what I might do is I might ask you about certain leaf warblers. I'm not asking you to identify every species. I want to see the process, what we went through, and if you can get to the species level one by one. So let's come to this bird. So what can you say about this? How will you go identifying this particular leaf warbler? You can start typing comments over here, no problem. What is the first thing you will notice when you see a leaf warbler? Okay, wing bar, correct. So wing bar is present. Now what is the next? Once you see a wing bar, crown stripe. Of course, the crown stripe is present. Then what is the next one? Okay, pale crown, wing bar. What will you see once you see two wing bars? What question you should ask me now is my question. Size of correct, exactly. Size of the so this is a big size leaf warbler. Adesh has already identified the bird, but the process of the bird is exactly like this. If you see the size, first you see the wing bar, then you look at the size, this big size bird, then you see the crown stripe, then you see the uh, bill is fleshy or not, and that itself will give you answer between only two warblers. One is Blythe's, the second one is Western Crown, and then you should try and see if these two are easy to. So, so I'm not expecting you to answer every wobbler, but what I'm expecting you to see if the thought process has gone in or not. Let's go to the next one. What do you think about this bird? Okay, no wing bar, correct. On the ground, correct. Bill, short tail, perfect. Compact bird, exactly. Round upper parts, and crown missing. If the wing bars are absent, you don't have to look at the crown at all. Olive in the wings, exactly. So if there's a olive in the wing, then which bird is this? Chiffchaff, exactly. A lot of people have started answering common chiffchaffs. So basically, what you follow the process right now is there is no wing bar, small bill, small short tail, compact body, along with the olive in the wing panel, and then that makes the identification much easier. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, which bird is this? What can you see and how will you broken eye ring? Exactly. So, bro, if the eye ring is broken, how many species you're looking at? Two. Perfect. So what are these two species? Yellow underparts, okay. But if the eye ring is broken, what two birds you're looking at? And what gray and green ground, exactly. So among these two, what do you think this could be? A gray ground or a green ground? Can you see green anywhere? Yeah. Or gray anywhere? It's a green ground warbler, exactly. So that's how you should try and eliminate most of the other birds by going by one. Let's see now what we can do next one. Okay. Who wants to ID this? And what you should look out for this bird. Two wing bars. Okay. Wing bar is present. Exactly. The next one is large size. Perfect. Okay. Is the crown stripe present or absent here? Arc legs. Okay. Lower mandible. Fine. No crown stripe. Absolutely right. So what are the large size with wing bars, no crown stripe wobblers? Greenish, someone has suggested, which is absolutely right. But what are the three options here? If you see a large size leaf wobbler with wing bars without crown stripe. How many wobblers we should consider? Green, greenish, and large bill leaf. Exactly. So now we are trying to get into different species. Like once you start looking at greenish wobblers, are absolutely right over here. Should always look out because greenish wobbler will always have a pale white belly compared to green wobbler. So first we should look out for wing bars without crown stripe, and then we should go to the next one if the belly is gray or not. So I think I include only four wobblers for quiz here. But now let's go to. But before we do that, why don't you guys? I'll give you a scenario. Uh, Small size leaf wobbler with crown stripe, with wing bars, with pale drum. What all things it could be? What all wobblers are there in that combination? No, I'll repeat again. So I'll just type. It's simpler.
Yeah, I think that's more easy. Yeah.
Small size with wing bar. Pale drum. Five. Okay. So, Rufus leaf wobbler, accentuated wobbler, tail drum. One more wobbler is missing right now. This. I guess you have almost answered buff bar as well. Yeah, exactly. So, so now you guys are getting at how to get wobblers into small group by eliminating the other wobblers, and and then you should try and see among those wobblers what it could be, and then wobbler identification can get much easier. So one more before I end the presentation, I would like to point out few wobblers here, which are there in India. I think I've seen almost all of them without, I think, exception of one. So out of which buff-throated wobbler in recent years we have been finding them quite often in Arunachal Pradesh, throughout eastern Himalayas, and which thought to be known from India by two specimens. It's a regular wintering as well as breeding bird in western Arunachal Pradesh. And imagine I must have seen buff-throated wobbler in that area region for I don't know maybe about 15 odd years, but not unless and until 2 years back, I realized the bird was present. So you can tend to misidentify or overlook wobblers quite easily. And I think it was Mike Prince and I were birding together, and then we thought the bird looked different. And then we investigated more, and then now we have found a good population of buff-throated wobbler breeding in Arunachal Pradesh. Arctic warbler, which is, I would say, regular wintering bird in and around Andaman and Nicobar Islands. I've seen them multiple times there. Again, a large size. This one will be, so buff-throated warbler will be with warbler without wing bars. Arctic warbler will be there in the large size with wing bars without crown stripe. So as two-barred warbler. Again, bird I've seen it in Andaman Nicobar. Claudia's leaf warbler. Okay, so this warbler is definitely there in India. 110%. It's known by specimens. The problem is, unless and until you get this bird in hand, or if this bird is singing, you won't be able to tell them apart because it looks exactly like Blythe's leaf wobbler otherwise. So eastern ground wobbler, which I've seen in the easternmost part of Namdapha. Pale leg leaf wobbler, again, I've seen it once in wintering in Nicobar. And Chinese leaf wobbler, if I remember correctly, even Saurabh heard the word in 2016. I think he got recording, if I remember correctly from Bolong. I had seen this bird, which responded to one of the Chinese leaf wobbler tapes in Bolong in 2015. But unfortunately, I could not record the song or took a picture. It's responded. But it should be there in India. It's known from Bhutan already. So again, one of those birds which may look similar to uh, Nemangaram wobbler and could be difficult to identify in the field. And these three wobblers, which are known from nearby areas, which I'm sure which are there in India, and we should look out for these birds in future. One of them is alpine warbler, which is split from which is split from Pickles leaf warbler, as recently as 10 years back, I guess. Uh, but there's a possibility that they might lose this bird again with the entire genome being developed. But there are known specimens from Nepal, so I'm sure it's there in winter. It winters in and around India as well. Yellow streaked warbler, again very common bird in Southeast Asia, should be wintering in northeast. So is white-tailed leaf warbler, which winters in northern Myanmar. It should pop up one of these days in northeast of India. So, but before we jump onto all these vagrants and possible leaf wobblers, what we should do is always try and see if we can try and identify the common wobblers first. So once you get familiarized with the common wobblers, then it's much easier to eliminate rare wobblers or vagrant wobblers. And again, what I would like to stress more is it's always about birding works differently for different people. The way uh, the way I look at bird is the way how bird fits into the entire habitat rather than the main ID features. So I will never go and look for the wing bar or the bill or the supercilium reaching to the nape or not. But first, I'd like to see the bird how it fits in the entire picture of habitat, and then I like to. So, but everyone has a different way of looking at birds. Like I'm always fascinated with some of my friends who are color blind because the way I get to learn from them is a lot different compared to other birders. And I have like in fact I would say birders who are colorblind are way better in identifying leaf wobblers than any of us, or because they get to see leaf wobblers in a almost like a black and white, and that makes the life even more interesting and more easier or at the same time difficult. I don't know. But yeah, so it's always about combination of characters. It's always about how you go into field and look at the birds, and it's always and that's what makes the birding more challenging. The more difficult the group is, more fun in identifying those birds. I've used multiple references for this presentation. If you get chance, try and see for Alstrom presentation on the Philoscopus and Sacertus wobblers in China, old presentation in 2012. Uh, I wrote a long review on some of these wobblers during my master's time. Uh, Umesh had done a long review of identification of these leaf wobblers during masters. I would like to like I'm more than happy to share these things whenever you guys want. And I would like to thank Prathamesh and entire Doors and Thani and Raigad team, Amay and Mayuresh, who actually did a trial run with this presentation. Lots of photographers who gave, and like all these photos are in public domain, but I would like to thank all the photographers and sound recordings from Zenu Canto. Again, they are available for everyone to listen. So try and listen more to the songs. Go to the field, try and see as many wobblers possible. And that's it. Thank you.